17 years ago, Max Cavalera left Sepultura and he left the band that he created. And initially, it didn't seem like the band would resist that. I remember that at the time, this is December 96, Kerrang! Magazine published a poster with the saying Sepultura 1984-1996. But soon enough, the band found a new singer, American Derek Green from Cleveland, from the Cleveland hardcore scene, and they released the album Against in 98, which was a more hardcore flavored album, quite an interesting album, but that's another discussion. Well, the name Sepultura has a lot of baggage these days. Why? Because this is a band that started in 1984, and they released the first album, Bestial Devastation, first EP, Bestial Devastation, split album, in 1985. And what happens there is that they helped create the black and death metal movements. I mean, Bestial Devastation and Morbid Visions have all the extreme images and the corpse paint, all the spikes, leather, and everything else in terms of clothing. So they and the riffs are evil as fuck. I mean, it's really death and black and thrash metal all put together, and they are working in the same template, and at the same time as bands such as Death, Possessed, Celtic Frost, Voivod, Battery, and so forth. I mean, they are a part of the same wave, and they are creating those genres together with these bands. So they're very important for Brazilian metal and for metal as well. And the band always evolved in a very progressive manner. Schizophrenia also is more influenced by technical thrash metal, the Nuclear Assault type of thrash of the time, but still keeping the death metal influence. And then in 1989-88 they get a deal with Roadrunner. Scott Burns, the American producer, comes from the United States, records Beneath the Remains with them here in Brazil, in Rio de Janeiro, in Nas Nuvens Studio during the nights, and they release it through Roadrunner, and the band finally explodes. They do a tour with Sodom, and they enter the international scenario for thrash and death metal. And it's with the following album, Arise, that crystallizes completely. They fly to Morris Sound Studios in Florida. Scott Burns again is the producer. Michael Eden is doing the covers. I mean, everything is going around the death metal scene, the Florida death metal scene, with Obituary, Deicide, Death, Morbid Angel, and so forth. So Sepultura gets mixed with these bands, and even though, in my opinion, they are in a gray area between death and thrash, I mean, they're not as aggressive as something like Deicide or Morbid Angel, for instance, but they're not as light in a way as Metallica and Slayer. They are somewhere in between, and most of the times closer to death metal. They are put together in terms of touring and promotion with the death metal scene. Now, after Arise, the band reaches that pinnacle of success, and they decide to change their sound. And when they change their sound, they go to Chaos AD, which is released in 1993, and it has all those influences of industrial metal and alternative metal like Fudge Tunnel, and a bit of hardcore. I mean, even you could say that Biohazard has got some influence there. And but they took things to another level, climaxing in terms of evolution with Roots, which is a landmark album, really a groundbreaking album that changed everything, where they combine influences of new metal with death metal, hardcore punk, and thrash metal. And that album is really, it set a new level of songwriting. It is something else. It's a one-of-a-kind album, couldn't be reproduced. Max Cavalera tried with Soulfly, didn't really work, at least in the beginning. But Roots is an album that marked the generation and created a very unique sound. So that's the status the band was, and that's the baggage, that's the legacy of this band, and that's what they have to carry and live up to with the new album, with their new albums, everything that they released ever since. Now, the last few years has shown a kind of back to basics and a back to aggression point of view for the band, but not only for Sepultura, also from the Cavalera brothers. Igor Cavalera left the band in 2006 and immediately started Cavalera Conspiracy with his brother, and that band also goes back to more straightforward riffs, more hard-hitting, heavy stuff, death and thrash. Soulfly, Max's band since Dark Ages, which was released, I believe, in 2005, also focuses on the more extreme side of his capacities as a composer. So Soulfly has been leaving the groovy, not completely, but left a little bit of the groove stuff to the side, and is focusing on his thrash and death roots. And the same thing has been happening with Sepultura. Kairos, which was the last Sepultura album, was also a more thrash and speed focused album, and The Mediator is a development of this return to form, of return to extremity. This is undoubtedly the extremist record that Sepultura has released since Derek Green got into the band and we have a new band. The tonic of the music is a mixture of elements of death, thrash metal and hardcore, and add to that the typical experimentalisms that the band has been practicing since Chaos AD, with a little bit of the groove as well that they have developed. In this sense, the record is very different from the death thrash which they practiced in the two albums that actually set them up as titans of the genre, Arise and Beneath the Remains. It's a record with very modern production, very contemporary sound that belongs to the present and not to the thrash 23 years ago when they were releasing Arise and Beneath the Remains and their current drummer wasn't even alive or just being born. So it's a record that gets elements of writing that come from the period that the band was being born in the late 80s and comes into the entrance of Derek Green. It has everything, a little bit of everything from all Sepultura albums, basically. In the next video, we're gonna analyze the record itself and go into an analysis of a little bit of track by track of the best tracks. So stay tuned for the next episode.